What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the ShiftEQ.Podcast with Alan K. This is episode 3.22 maybe. And in this episode, I'm going to go over a few things. First is the path to getting into some MMA training and why, especially converting from the bodybuilding path. Talk about the aspect of going to a new gym, signing up for a new gym, as well as the art of Feng Shui, and the lessons to be learned about atmosphere, your environment, and the energies that help you show up or not show up, per se. The Florida Natural, for which I'm going to be part of a commentary team as the Subculture Live team here in 2 weeks. And the last but not least of my 4th place finish in the OCB from a few weeks ago. That'll be the end of that. We're kind of beating a dead horse. But I definitely wanted to give a lot of other insight into that as well, because there's so many different perspectives to be had for training for a very specific event, especially when it was the last of my whole year. But before I get into this episode, guys, do me a favor. If you gain anything out of this episode, anything of the previous episodes, or you gain something out of the channel, do me a favor, like, follow, subscribe, share the episode. And then also, if you have any feedback, man, leave some comments below, or also find me on Instagram at alank.health. Now, MMA. So a little background into this. Training for bodybuilding has given me a different perspective on how I view training, on how my body responds based off of what the goal is in mind. And what I've been, learning from with regards to training is just how I mentally and emotionally perform outside of just the training for the event. For example, like, how am I mentally, emotionally at work? How am I in my other endeavors? How am I with my business? How am I with my finances? How are my relationships, right? In lieu of this. And this last competition training cycle definitely put me at a really challenging headspace with all the brain fog. I was very irritable. Things at work were just getting to me personally, and customers and whole 9 yards. I definitely, I'd originally signed up to do a docuseries of that entire training event. And then towards the end there, I just started losing my mind. I'll tell you, it was a challenge. It was the most challenging bodybuilding training anything. And it's interesting because we associate training usually with like the waking up at 5 a.m. and how much weight I'm going to push or getting over being sore. I would have taken that 10 times over than the mental and the brain fog that I had gone through towards the end over there. It's when you're training your body down to a very primitive state in your body that you realize that you're actually just irritable at the core when you're literally at a point of survival. For me, I didn't enjoy being in that state. I didn't enjoy feeling like the only things I could do were very minimal, per se. Like, my body was trying to shred as much fat off as possible while trying to preserve the muscle that it had, when, in general, our human DNA, our human body is designed to keep us survival mode, and it needs body fat to, in case of famine, and it stores water in the event of drought and all these other things. And by competing for it, you're going against these natural signals. And for me, I found it very challenging because, I do a lot of other things outside of bodybuilding, such as my regular engineering job, such as creating content, and other plans of the business that I had to just step all away from. And my entire focus for like the last 2 months were just the bodybuilding. But in this matter of being vulnerable per se, this matter of being, dude, I was like down to 127 pounds at one point. And I was working out at my local 24-hour fitness. And I said this in a previous podcast, but I saw this kid and his girlfriend on one of the benches, and they weren't even lifting on it. Like it was one of the decline benches. And usually most gyms only have like one adjustable decline bench next to the dumbbells. And they weren't even using it. They were just setting their dumbbells on there and doing some kind of I think a circuit. I don't know. I just saw originally, hey, they were on there, went to another machine, did another part of my work. I came back to it. And then as soon as I saw that they're still there, I asked the young man, I was like, hey, man, how many more sets do you guys have? And gets all fucking upset at me. We have one more. I'm like, all right, really interesting. Don't know what's going on in his day, but whatever. And then his girlfriend just turns and looks at me and just like, well, I just got done with a broken arm, and then I can't lift, and then I just got lifting, and I'm just like, cool, man. Like great story. I appreciate you sharing that. And then all of a sudden, this young man just starts staring me down. I'm just, what is going on? And finally, I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to walk away for a little bit. They said they have one more, kind of come back, and then they're starting to rack him. And then all of a sudden, he still has this energy toward me. It's like, hey, man, did I say something that upset you? Is there something that I did? He goes, well, you could have been more patient. And I was like, all right, cool. And something just goes out of nowhere. He goes, yeah, little boy. And he says it under his breath. Right. And it's not like he said it directly, throwing it in my face. He's just kind of like in passing. It's like what I would visually, think of as a keyboard warrior, where they just kind of, they're going to put the profile associated with it. Yeah, they're going to say what they want to say, but they really know that they're not going to face repercussions for what they're going to say, and that's kind of like the subtle under the breath comment. But I'm 36. I'm probably, I don't know, at least 10, 12, 13 years older than this guy. And then all of a sudden, I'm just like, for the rest of my workout, I just feel these weird set of eyes on me this entire time. And this guy is just still looking at me. And I got to tell you, it's one thing, you kind of get that feeling like now when I'm starting to eat again, and I'm starting to eat a lot more carbs, starting to eat a lot more fat. I'm probably eating a little too much right now. I'm not going to lie to you, but I feel a lot better. I feel a lot more energetic. I'm about 10 pounds heavier from show, and I feel a lot more functional. But I can only imagine, had this kid got into his head and then decided to try to fight me for no fucking reason. And if I was in that state that I was in right before competition, I don't know if I would have been able to defend myself, let alone functionally perform. And that's kind of what's unfortunate sometimes, is when you're cutting that low. For me, I feel very vulnerable just as a person. That when I'm around my family and I'm the one taking them out to dinner, doing public things. Like if some shit has to go down, I'm the one that's going to be protecting them. And I don't feel as capable of doing so when I am that lean. And so, the only way I can think about it, because I do want to be able to compete again, I want to continue doing this as a regular part of my life, poking and gaining weight and training more in the winters and falls, and then leaning down for summer and competing and doing different competitions, eating all the way through with all the different foods and various travels. Like these are things I love doing. And I don't want to take that away from me, but I also realize that sometimes there comes a cost of, you just don't know what people are capable of. And you don't know why. And I remember growing up, one of the biggest lessons I learned, because in high school, we would love partying down in the not so nicer neighborhood sometimes, just because they had funner parties. And we're ignorant kids. We don't really know the difference of why they're a little bit more, not so great areas or so. We just don't know. And, as kids, we kind of feared all these gangs, all these gang members. And I remember someone enlightened me about, it's not about the gangs you got to be afraid of. It's the people who are trying to be associated with the game, trying to say that there is someone. It's because they always feel like they have something to prove. And it's interesting now because that same incident, maybe 15 years ago for me, when I was really immature, insecure, thinking I was a someone, not realizing I'm actually nobody, I would have probably ended up getting a fight with this kid. Probably like, oh, who you fuck you looking at, blah, 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 throw one in it. But, now that I'm thinking I'm 36, I'm just like, yo, kid, I have some shit to do after this. Like, you probably would whoop my ass here. What is that going to do? What is that going to prove? Like, good job. You beat a guy that you're bigger than by at least like 50 or 60 pounds. Like, what does it accomplish? And it's, but again, it's not that like, I just don't want to ever get into that moment and feel like ridiculously vulnerable at that point. So, it's one of those where I feel like some type of physical altercation and fights, I think they're almost always inevitable. You should always, I don't want to say always be ready for one, but always be ready to at least like de-escalate that situation and de-escalate as much as possible. And then with the popularity of USC, I was going to say USC, UFC, and with the popularity, just people, I don't know, getting more passive and trying to get popular on the internet. You just don't know what people are doing these days. I mean, and it's scary. And that's why I would advise people to learn how to fight. Now, I put it out to the universe that I wanted to do a fight. And I'm glad I did. And I just projected it. I want to fight. I want to get a fight. Because in that time, I've had a couple of friends reach out to me. And a lot of my friends have that I either served with, played poker with. And then I had some people I went to high school with all the way from back there. All have reached out to me ever since I put out, hey, I want to do this. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I've got, which kind of made me tamper down my expectations with training and as well as getting into a fight. He said it took him years of training just for him to be safe stepping into the ring. And it really, really got me going. There's some things that I definitely need to get ahead of for sure. Because if this is something that I do, it is, putting myself in harm's way. It is putting myself in a space where someone is there to effectively kill me. As my goal is for him. And there's going to be other people that have been training longer to do that and they have a mindset for it. And there's other people that want to do that for a living. This is something that I just want to do to learn. And if you can already imagine the initiative of that different mindset, there's a different burning desire that happens in training with the guy that's trying to do it for a living and the guy that's just trying to be curious about the sport. And with fighting, there are some permanent consequences that do have to happen. So therefore, it's not like bodybuilding or weightlifting or running for a marathon where you could just get on a training plan and get yourself there. I mean, you can, but it's not like someone's over there trying to run you over in the marathon or trying to throw a weight at your face in a bodybuilding competition. Like this is, people training for a fight is training for a fight. You're literally there to fight. So now it kind of got me leaning as well. I also want to stay lean for the summer. And as I kind of alluded to, it's been challenging to keep my eating tampered down, especially when I spent like the last year training. But I think what I might start doing, what I'm leaning towards is maybe changing my schedule, at least for now, do one more bodybuilding competition right before the football season starts. Do that somewhere here in Southern California. I actually found a show in San Diego, which would be great. So then I could get a lot of my other San Diego friends and maybe see a show, maybe get them into competing, as I've always tried to encourage. And then we'll get into learning how to fight and a couple of more fundamentals, and at least so we see where I'm at, and then make a determination of what we need to do to go from there. Another thing this would give me the opportunity to do is, because it's fall and because it's winter, like I want to get in the cycle of being able to tamper off competing over the summer, letting my body's hormones and everything catch up, getting some body fat back onto me, as well as, being able to gain muscle in the off seasons. And I think, as well as if I'm going to learn how to train how to fight, there's some recovery that has to happen. There are certain signalings of your body that you kind of need with your hormones to be balanced in order for me to fully recover. And I'm being very speculative with this, right? Obviously, the science of this, I'm not fully down packed on. Maybe I could bring a guest on. We could talk about this. But you need some body fat to recover for certain events. I think what I might start doing is maybe get there's a couple of fundamental courses that I saw, like you could do oh my god, if you saw my Instagram, I'm struggling with this Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I've been saying Brazilian for so many times. I've been saying it a Brazilian times, but saying it again, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You could do that fundamental course, or you could do like a striking fundamental course. What my idea is, and what I'm thinking, is taking this off season to gain weight, put on some muscle, put on some fat, gain some weight, so that I'm not back to 127 pounds again for the next competition that I'm up higher, as well as incorporating striking as a means of cardio, or substituting a couple of those in the meantime. I think from a perspective of gaining weight, doing cardio here and there, and then being able to vary what kind of cardio that is, I think by doing, the striking is a little bit more of what I'm leaning towards. There's a couple of events that I got invited to of a bunch of various different martial arts. I think, though, what I'm going to lean towards is that, but I mean, we'll see, right? I keep changing my mind on this. I'm always open to this, but from the basic standpoint of how we're going to train from here out, from how we're going to train leading up to maybe next summer or next year, I think that's going to be the plan, is to take the fall, we'll complete the summer, do another competition. The one I'm thinking about is like the World WNBF. It's like the World Natural Bodybuilding Federation. They have like an active military event, I believe August 19th or so. And then we might do that event and then start the bulk, or start the gain, start the muscle, everything, and the new training following with that. And I love that. I love, one of my fun moments of training throughout this entire transformation has always been when I was training for the marathon and training for a bodybuilding competition. I think as much as I think you should be pushing yourself doing weights, I think you should as much as you should just, focus on eating very strict. I think there's an element of getting your body out there and having to perform that, for me, I have found a lot of mental clarity, that I found a lot of just functioning. I think like, for example, when I'm running a marathon and I get to, and I'm training for a 5-mile run, let's per se, I always do down and back. So I'd get to 2.5 miles and start running back. And there's no way I can stop, right? At some point or another, as the further I keep going, the further it takes for me to return. In bodybuilding, you don't have that, right? Like, you can just put the bench down and go home. There's like no external pressure that kind of forces you to perform throughout and holds you accountable from beginning to end. And for me, I noticed that kind of changing for me towards the end of bodybuilding, towards this last competition. It's like, not only was I fucking going through it, but then I started losing my love for bodybuilding. And I think by having different forms of training and different ways of training my body, it'll provide that little bit of oomph to be able to change my mindset. Next, with that being said, that's going to go into our next segment. So that, not only did that, with the kid at the 24-hour fitness kind of irk me and make me realize, hey, maybe I could have learned certain things. It also made me realize, like, how can I change, not being around this kind of energy, not being around these kind of kids that are just, for some reason, are egotistical and always want to fight. So I actually switched over to Gold's Gym, and it's just interesting on how different that experience has been already. Gold's Gym is a little bit more reputable. It's the one that Arnold at Venice Beach is known for, and it's I think it's starting to become a little bit more commercialized. I'm seeing them. Apparently, they're starting to open a lot more in other gyms. And the one that I go to, there's a lot of good-looking people, a lot of ripped people, a lot of people juicing, it doesn't matter. It was nice to be in an area where there's so many people that are just solely focused on lifting, and that energy, it felt around, and I felt myself, wanting to dress better, wanting to lift heavier, wanting to be more focused. And it's crazy how just a really small change in scenery could do a whole lot for your internal energy and how your aura is and how you carry yourself out, especially in your training. It's the gym energy is a lot better. The music is a little bit more lively. The equipment's a lot more newer. The place is upkept. It's being in those atmospheres that changes every energy dynamic and can change everything about your entire gym experience. This leads me to like a memory of being taught about Feng Shui. Now, there's so many variations of Feng Shui as they talk about arrangement of couches or like your laundry, or just pretty much it's like an orientation of your surroundings and how that orientation can affect your energy, how you either manifest it, how you internalize it, and how you project it. This was first brought light to me when I noticed, like when I do laundry, right? I'm one of those kind of people that get all my laundry, throw it on my bed, and then start picking at it throughout the week. That's how I used to be. What I found out, though, is that every time I actually just fold my laundry, put it all away, and actually make my bed, I feel a little bit more lively, a little bit more energetic every single day. And I've noticed as soon as when someone pointed out to me on that being Feng Shui and how you could just change your surroundings, how you could change your clutteredness, I've noticed, like, when I do things like have the dishes all out of the sink, or have all my clothes folded, or have my entire week planned out, it's these small subtleties that change my energy dynamic of how I show up. Another example of this for me and for you guys who have maybe been following me since the first day, think about what the studio was like the very first time you ever listened to me, or maybe this might be the first time, but if you ever go back to like the very first episode, think about the communication style. I want you to see and listen and hear like the cadence. And it's not that it's like the studio per se that's associated with that energy or associated with that version of me. It's just that it's crazy how certain settings just bring about a different energy, just bring about a different train of thought, or how a different gym can bring about a different motivation. And full disclosure too, with that gym, I started buying better gym clothes, and I started getting that hunger to be in there and start lifting hard again, which is, man, I needed that. I'll tell you, I needed that, because since this last competition, I'll be honest, like, it has been very challenging to stay motivated, very challenging to stay on my eating plan. It's been challenging to let go of how lean I was. Like, I shared it on Instagram. I was about 6.7% at 134 pounds, maybe about 4 weeks before show. anywhere between a 2 to 4 week, maybe 3 to 4. 3 to 6 weeks. But before I stepped up on stage, before we started carving up, I was at 127 pounds and I looked noticeably leaner. And it's not that it's like the body fat percentage that really matters, right? It's not like because staying 5%, 4%, that's fucking challenging. But it's more of spending the greater portion of the entire last year watching myself lean down, lean down, lean down, lean down, lean down, less and less body fat, less and less body fat. All your metrics of success are measured in how much less body fat and how much weight you're losing. To all of a sudden, in 2 weeks, effectively taking away, man, a couple of months of training is what it feels like based off of just weight, right? And I'm definitely being a little dramatic in my depiction here, but think about it. The last time I weighed 130, I think I weigh like 138, 139 right now. Last time I weighed that was before we even started cutting, and I spent the last 3 months cutting before show. And this is only 2 weeks post show. Now, mind you, this is a lot on me because I definitely haven't been saying no to a lot of things. I kind of went into just, I've spent the last year training for this, so I deserved it, and I earned it, right? I'm over having abs all the time, over this. But I will tell you, being around people that are way more energetic and more vested into their workout regimen, and you got a whole better community, that it makes me elevate to that. That's a lot of the reason why I ended up working with David Milligan and started working with Nonstop Fitness, because the team as a whole has a lot of great people that raise each other up on a regular basis. Again, although I'm going to talk about this towards the end, even though I gained, I placed in 4th place in the Open, the year prior, I wasn't even close to being placed in the Open. So the fact that I was 4th and competing for 1st is a significant leap and bounds. And I think a lot of that had to do with everybody that I was associated with leading up to that. And that's why it's finding that energy, finding the feng shui for you in your life and your atmosphere, whether it's making the dishes that are clean, whether it's the environment of the gym that you go to, as well as maybe just the clothes being folded from your laundry. It's all of these things that, if you can control the surroundings and the energy that you put yourself in, it might bring a better version of you. It could just be very much of just everything away. And ironically enough, everybody that I've met at the gym has been really cool. No one has tried to fight me for a bench press yet. But we'll definitely, I'll let everybody know about this. We'll go from there. Another thing that's really interesting about the other gym and why I enjoy being around people that are there, when there's a lot more concentrated of better looking people as well as more fit people, the feeling of getting my ego challenged and feeling uncomfortable, as well as feeling these random urges of making sure I can lift and holding my own. I enjoy that. I used to resist that a long time ago, but I've found that there's so much more to be had and learned in going against the grain of those feelings and figuring out why I'm feeling so triggered by it or feeling this urge to prove myself, than I have of actively just actually having to prove myself, or B, trying to projecting off and acting like I'm better. And I would encourage all of you that if you're ever in these moments where, you're in a field or a pursuit or a passion that you feel passionate about, and you're finding yourself getting challenged in something, figure out why, right? And I don't mean like physical challenge, right? I mean like the mental, the emotional, like when you're facing a coworker or facing someone that's resisting something that you need to get through in order for you to be a better version. Like, do you accept that challenge at surface, or do you work through why it's a challenge and find resolve? for me in bodybuilding and working out, for me, I had the challenge of being motivated because I couldn't figure out why. Like, fuck, I already did this, already done that, which is one of the the tougher challenges with being on diets and changing lifestyles. But I found that by actively pursuing, maybe getting my ego challenged, maybe actively pursuing feeling like I'm going through body dysmorphia, which I am, it's where we start finding results. Speaking about energies, the next show that I'm going to be a part of is not actually competing, but it's actually commentating. And that is commentating for the Florida Natural, which is Alamonte Springs, Florida, which is going to be happening on June 3rd and 4th. I'm still really brand new to the bodybuilding and natural bodybuilding community. But what this feels like to me is like the Olympia of the natural bodybuilding world. If you're following any of the pages, or if you follow a lot of the natural bodybuilding athletes, such as I do, you notice a lot of the big names are heading over there. Not only are they heading over there, but they're making announcements. You see the pro athletes challenging each other and calling each other out. And my God, I know it's a natural event. And sure, you're not going to see people that are as big as Chris Bum or Arnold Schwarzenegger or Jay Cutler or any of those big names. But there are some motherfucking beasts in the natural bodybuilding community. There are so many of them. And it's amazing on how many athletes were, because if you just focus on social media, that there's so many people that, natty or not, you got to do steroids to do this. The rhetoric of any kind of phenomenal result, you got to do the juice to get there. But you have an entire exhibit, an entire industry of athletes that are all natural. And it's phenomenal to see on what the human body can produce naturally and how good certain genetics really are. And with that, I'm like excited about three things about this event, right? First are the athletes, right? The community. There are so many amazing people in this community. The amount of money that actually goes into natural bodybuilding isn't that much. It's not compared to the juiced out counterparts. And so therefore, like a lot of these natural athletes are regular people, like in the military, regular business people. I'm an engineer, stay-at-home moms, whole nine yards. These are regular people. It's not like they're out there trying to create a YouTube channel with millions of followers. And it's not like all these people have coupon codes, even though a lot of them do. But it's not like they're making a lot of money, such as the Chris Bums and whatnot. So why I'm saying that is because a lot of these people are doing the sport because they love the sport. We all have a mutual passion of competing. I spoke about overcoming my issues with self-value, self-perception, and that's what bodybuilding did for me, and that's why it's so powerful and why I love it. Imagine being in an event that are all around that kind of energy, the energy of investing into self to overcome certain something to be at that pinnacle of yourself, your body. I don't care what anybody says, getting yourself to that low of body fat percentage and then building the confidence and self-development to get up on a stage and be judged and not think anything less of yourself for it is takes a lot of work, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. You guys have heard me talk about how challenging it is to cut down and get ready for a show. Hell, I'm still bitching about it on a regular basis. It's challenging. It's fucking challenging. And the only way to get through that is to hold on to something that's greater than those challenges. And that reason is different for everyone. And I found that there are so many amazing people by connecting with a lot of those people that are in pursuit of a higher version for a higher purpose. It's phenomenal, and I can't wait to do that. The second thing I'm excited about for this Florida Natural are all the brands, or all the supplement brands, all the team brands, food brands, supplement brands. I mean, the whole 9 yards, because a lot of these brands, just like the community, have some kind of vision, some problem in the world that they want to fix, whether it's they don't think trainers are utilizing this enough, supplements don't have this, teams are lacking these kind of personalities in their training teams, or they have something else to provide. Like Nonstop Fitness, the team that I train with currently, that's their brand. It's getting in touch with those kind of people that definitely make the experience worth it, and also helps you visualize the higher purpose that a lot of these people are competing for. And the last but not least, as you guys can know, it's the food. It's the food. Like, obviously bodybuilding is surrounded around food. And if there's anybody, or if there's any group of people that love the extreme fatty of fats and the extreme sweet of sweets, or the biggest concoction of cookies and brownies and brookies and ice cream this and sandwich that, it is definitely that of the bodybuilding community. And what I'm excited about is all the different varieties of foods and cheat this, and how many, oh my God, that's actually good for you, and that's going to meet my macros, and it's going to meet all of my better eating, what, this, then, yet, like the surprises of food that I am just excited for. I'm actually getting hungry now. I'm thinking about it. Yeah. And see, this is why I have my challenges of of post show, and why we're probably going to compete again, to be honest with you. Okay. Oh, and another thing about what's going to be really interesting for me personally, this is going to be the first time in 4 years that I'm being a commentator for a live event for a big show or a big event. I mean, I've had things where I recorded things for my podcast, recorded things on like an online show. But for those of you guys that know, about 4 years ago, I was a commentator for Live at the Bike. And Live at the Bike was a live streaming poker show that provided an audience of what the whole cards were for the poker players. It also showed people strategy, a lot of people to chat and talk, communicate. And it brought about so many different personalities. It brought about a lot of experiences of how to interact with the crowd and how to maintain calm and not allowing my emotions to get the best of me. And I will tell you, I had a really embarrassing moment on that show. And I think it kind of led to me eventually not being able to commentate for a while, on top of a couple of other politics, which I'm going to dismiss. But I'll tell you, one of the moments that I for sure felt really embarrassing, especially for me on live stream in front of thousands of thousands of people that were tuned in at the time. And I was commentating for this show. It's at the Bicycle Casino in Los Angeles, California. And we're playing a regular basic, I think 5-10, maybe a 5-5-10 show. And in the lineup, and it's 9-handed, poker game, 2 of the players were very attractive women. And unfortunately, the poker realm, or I guess any realm where you get a bunch of guys that are just constantly just typing away and clicking and not having to be held accountable for their words face up, it just they're objectifying them left and right. The comments were embarrassing, to be really honest with you. All out of sexist this. How much do you think she charged for this act, I mean, it was embarrassing. And for me, my parents, my grandmother always tuned in whenever I was doing a show. And I just got embarrassed. And instead of kind of just turning off and stop looking at the comments because the comments were bothering me, instead of maybe taking a different route at what I did, I just kind of lost my shit on air. Now, mind you, it did two things. It did two things. A, it got a lot of those guys to stop talking. And a lot of people started talking, speaking up about, oh my God, thank God, because these comments are getting uncomfortable. But then, as you can imagine, everybody who was trolling just trolled more, right? And it was just like, ah, and then then it become, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. Instead of trolling around the women, they were just all trolling me and losing my shit. Which, if you really look at it, at the very least, I did get them to stop talking about women, but it just kind of brings light to, yeah, you had every right to feel the way that you did, but that doesn't mean you always have to express it as such. It doesn't mean you always have to allow it to get to you. Again, getting triggered is a choice. I speak about it on a regular basis, and this is one of the examples in my life that I get to learn from where, maybe being offended or being triggered or being upset is something that you choose to do sometimes. You can have control over if you choose to. And it's interesting on now, when I get into these shows now, when I get ready for events like this, I sit there, I'm like, what are things that I can improve on? What are the habits for me in the past that I've done? And for me to get ready for this is we're being reminded of instances of not allowing my emotions to dictate anything. And then also, if I'm going to commentate, make it about the athletes, make it about the event. It only becomes negative if you start reflecting onto that negative. And mind you, sometimes some of that needs to be reflected on. But if you're actively out there looking for moments to be upset and losing your temper, then you're going to find it. And now I don't really get involved with those kind of things. And I just kind of avoid that. On top of that, the poker community is very, very brutal, very brutal. And so it's also picking what community and what kind of a feng shui you want to put yourself around with regards to energies. And the last but not least, and I wanted to retouch on this fourth place perspective one more time, because I've talked about it over and over again. I've reposted about what that means, and I'm going to sit here and kind of speak about it again, just because I feel like I've gotten a lot of reactions based off me saying I was disappointed. Let me make this clear, right? Being disappointed is not a bad thing. There's a lot to be learned about why I felt disappointed about coming in fourth place. There's a lot to gain out of it. And I've said it over and over again where, 2 years ago, if you were to tell me at this point that I would have been disappointed about not objectively having the best body in a physique competition, I'd have been like, Alan, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're already doing really well. And I had to remind myself of that. I had to remind myself that that was the goal. And all of that about resolve, I remember when I expressed that disappointment, everybody's kind of, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to, oh, you shouldn't feel disappointed. You should be like, but it is objectively disappointing. And it's not a bad thing. I want people, I feel like a lot of the reason why we get upset, why we internalize anger, why we internalize a lot of energies and why we don't express them is because people put such a down point towards being in what they perceive in as a negative feeling, like feeling disappointed. Like, yeah, there's ways to encourage yourself out of it, but I think there's a lot to also be gained about just sitting in that disappointment and working through that disappointment. I think the remedy isn't about feeling better from feeling disappointed, but rather having a better understanding of why you're disappointed. And that is where I think it really starts. Not where it ends, but where it starts. And then on top of that, I've earned my right to feel disappointed. And that's okay. Again, it's okay. Just like, let me sit in it. I think it's funny, like when when you go through breakups, people are like, oh, they try to get you out of the club, try to get you, I think there's a lot to just be said about just sitting in that feeling and understanding you're kind of going through some shit at the time. Now, I'm not saying stay in it. I'm not saying victimize yourself. All I'm saying is don't deflect and act like it's not happening, but rather when it is, work through why it's happening. If you're out and you hear a certain song that reminds you of a certain someone, you kind of get like, all right, well then turn off the song or get out of that for a little bit, or at least just sit there and own it. Yeah, this is kind of how I'm feeling. The reason why emotional intelligence exists and why it's so important is because we spent so many years and so much programming of telling people to defer their emotions and deflect them. But I have found that it's the moments where my emotions get flared up are the ones or the moments that are worth pursuing, that are worth working through, that are worth challenging and finding why I'm offended or why I'm hurt or why I'm disappointed. And why things like, I think I should have won. It's not like I said it in a manner that's like, I should have won. No, this. Like, no, there's certain critiques that I've had of the show that I'm going to stand by because it's happened now twice over. There's a couple of things that objectively happened that I'm not going to deny. But just because I express those, it's not a matter of complaining. It's just that is what it is. And you can choose to look at every event from however you want to. But I just say, hey, there's certain events that I meet a criteria that I expected. And I think it's interesting because I didn't have that criteria or those expectations before that show. But now that I commentate for Subculture Live, and now that I've got myself more immersed into the community and see how other shows have ran, as well as seeing the judging criteria, that's where it's like, all right, that's why my critiques. But it's again, I can't wait to get to a point. I think I'm starting to get a little bit of a better understanding of where I want to go with the training, of how I'm going to incorporate MMA, how I'm going to incorporate doing competitions. I'm going to say this again. I'm more concerned about getting people into natural bodybuilding and more concerned about getting people to compete at least once and putting yourself through the ringer of at least one of those kind of events, something like a marathon, something like a bodybuilding competition, maybe an MMA fight. In the future, I want to do an Ironman. It's by doing these things that you want to do and getting yourself training to a higher version of yourself that, in my opinion, I feel you learn so much more about with regards to self-investment, delayed gratification, and everything else that comes with investing into your body and making it a priority and yourself a priority for God knows how long. And again, I will keep you guys in line with how we're going to get into this training. For any of you guys that are listening to this, and you have a way, maybe you've done bodybuilding and you leveraged it with MMA training, maybe, like something like that, please reach out to me, Instagram, alank.health. And then with that, I think that's it, guys. Yeah, that's going to be it. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hope you guys gained, maybe learned something out of this. And don't forget, guys, always invest into yourself, make yourself a priority, and always be in service. I love you all. And until next time, deuce.